Like I'm sure you've been on a few of them. There we go, start recording. But I like to, remind folks about making sure that they have both their computers muted and their phones muted if they're connected through both. That they can have questions. They can put them in the chat box, or they can put them, they can audibly ask those questions. And yeah, that muting thing is key. So yeah, if
Okay.
I think it'll be okay. Yeah, it should be good. Yes, you might have a large attendees list, which is good. So worst case, you might have to go through the participants up at the top part of that left screen, left, I don't know, quadrant of the screen. And you might have to mute folks if you can, kind of figure out where it's coming from. So they won't be able to ask a question except to type it, but I know you know all this. I'm just running through it because I will be inaccessible, and yeah, so we should be good.
Okay. All right. And it starts at 1:30, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, and then just remind people that they are recorded also. But yeah.
Yep. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Ashley.
Good luck. All right. Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Hello, for those of you that are online, the presentation will start at 1:30. I just want to make sure that you guys are aware of that.
Has this meeting started?
Hi, this is Noemi from the DD. The meeting doesn't start until 1:30, I'm sorry.
1:30, so 12:30 Mountain Time then.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I heard somebody talking. I was walking by the room and I thought, oh dear, I didn't think they started yet.
No, I just had to get permission from Ashley to set it up. This is my first time doing the Skype one, so we wanted to make sure I was on and everything was ready to go.
Okay. Sounds good.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Of course, thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to wait a few more minutes until 1:30 to see who all else shows up, and then we'll get this started, okay? All right, so we have about 1 minute, and I just want to make sure that before we start that everyone can hear me okay, and that they are able to let me know if they have any questions before we begin. So I can already see that most of you are muted already. So to begin, I'm Noemi Borsia. I am the program specialist for the conflict-free case management agencies here with the division. So and I came on I think about 3 months ago into this role. We wanted to go over the level of care process, and then later on we're going to have Samantha Hines come in with a few changes to the SDR process as well. But before we begin all that, again, I remind you that if you have any questions, you can unmute your line and ask, or you can type it into the conversation box below on the left-hand side of the screen. And also to remind everyone that this meeting is recorded. We are doing this so that if anyone doesn't have a chance to join in today, they can come back and ask for the information at a later date. So if there's no questions to start off with, I can just start going through the PowerPoint. And again, I know this process is already known by pretty much everyone, but feel free to interrupt me since there might be questions or changes that you might not be aware of. So as we all know, the level of care process begins with the funding request. Again, just to start, all funding requests and level of care should now be coming directly to me. And if you have any outstanding funding requests or level of cares that are out with a different program specialist at the moment, They might be finishing them and then giving them to me for a review. But at this point, all of them should be in my care, in my cubicle, actually. So first off, the funding request will come directly to me. It's called the DHS 800 form, and it's pretty much the same form that we've been using for quite a while, where you let us know who's requesting funding, what they're requesting, if it's a conflict-free case management only, or if the CSPs are. I know there are a lot of people coming on, so I might want to wait a little bit.
No, I sent a conversation thing. I sent a text thing and I can't see it.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Okay, I think somebody's not on mute. I thought there was a question, but we'll just continue. And if you guys have questions, please speak up. My speakers are a little dim at the moment. So back to the funding request. We want this process to go as fast as possible, both for the agencies and the participant. And in order to do that, we want everything to be included in the funding request from the start. So if it is a funding request for a child, anybody under the age of 22, we need to know the school district name that will pay tuition and match, and then of course anticipated start date, if there's a community support provider, for that to be included, what kind of services are being requested, and then of course the signature, or not the signatures, but the name of the participant, date of birth, name of the case manager in case we do have questions, and name of the agencies. What happens is I get this funding request and send it to our program specialist, or financial program specialist, Liliana, and she approves that, and then it comes back to you through our secretary, Jennifer Krager. So you should be receiving this back after it's approved, and that should kind of let you know that we approved it. We're waiting for a funding level of care. So the level of care process, at the very start, we want to know the status of Social Security. So if a participant is not already receiving or has been denied SSI, the program specialist will, of course, that would be me, need to send a DIC form for approval. So what this means is that the DIC team will give out a determination whether or not the participant is disabled, and we use that determination until Social Security makes a decision. Remember that the last dates of any signed document will be the start date. So if the DIC approval is done at a later date, that will become the start date, not the date that is placed on the HCBS funding request. So again, here's an example. You guys probably already know this. If a person started services on 7/2/16, the level of care submitted 7/15, and then we don't have the information to determine that they do have Social Security or benefits, we will send all the information from the level of care to Kristen Townsend, who then does a DIC determination, and if the DIC comes out on 7/24, then the new start date will be 7/24. So here are all the documents that are required for a level of care. So I keep all of the funding requests in a folder at my desk, and I pretty much go through them every other week to make sure that there are no level of cares that should be on my desk that are not. So I know what's supposed to be coming in, and using that, I just make a time frame for you guys. And I know I've talked to quite a few that I'm waiting for level of cares that have been just waiting for, I think, about a month or two. But in the level of care, you have the current psychological. In that psychological, I want to emphasize that we are looking both at IQ scores and adaptive behavior scores. If the level of care only has the IQ score, I cannot make the determination that this person has an intellectual disability, because the definition itself says that it's the IQ and combination of functional limitations. So we do need those adaptive scores in order to process the level of care. Again, if I get a level of care that only has one, it only has the IQ score, that will kind of make the process slow down a little bit until we get those adaptive scores at a later date. We're also looking for the ICAP eligibility, which is a 2-page document, and then, of course, the whole ICAP booklet and the CompuScore. And I want to emphasize that I do look through pretty much every page of the CompuScore, the booklet, and the eligibility worksheet, and then make sure that the information reflects across all three. If I notice that the CompuScore and the booklet don't match, let's say the CompuScore says the person is going to go to day services and the booklet says the person is not needing day services at all or they're going to school, I will come back and ask you why those are not matching. And I do want to emphasize that the ICAP eligibility worksheet, where you mark off the different domains, where they have to meet at least 3 different domains, that date of when the person signs the eligibility worksheet is very important because that also impacts the start date. So please date those ICAP booklets and eligibility worksheets. We're looking, I should have changed this. The significant change request, I was waiting for some information and go back. I forgot to add it in the PowerPoint, but we have changed the process a little bit where we have a provisional plan of care called the DHS-DD 812, not 810. And this is going to be the form that you will submit instead of a SCR to me in order to process as the provisional plan of care. I'll go over that document at the end of this presentation because it ties into the SCR forms that Samantha Heinzer is going to go over at after the level of care is done. So you still need to submit a provisional plan of care. It just will not be the same form that you submit for a SCR or significant change request. Number 6, we do need the HCBS waiver of rights, the 717 form signed, and I do look at the dates of those as well. And then the HCBS eligibility determination. So I look at the dates, make sure that all of these forms are signed by the appropriate parties. And if they're not, that again will make the level of care process a whole lot slower. So I just want to emphasize that sometimes we don't see that something isn't signed until it reaches the SMART process, which I'll explain a little bit later. But that will keep the dates back, and that will affect your DSS date too. So it'll keep you might be. I'm sorry, I'm talking a little bit fast, but if the level of care isn't complete before the DSS application has that 45-day time frame, then you will have to resubmit the DSS paperwork again. So that's why I'm emphasizing to get all these documents to us in time and with all of the signatures because we don't want that time frame to run out with DSS.
Hi, I have a question. Are we supposed to be seeing a PowerPoint?
For those of you that are on the phone, you will not be able to see the PowerPoint because, of course, you're on the phone. But if you did, yes, you should be able to see the PowerPoint if you're on the Skype line. I don't know if Ashley's still on here, but she is the leader and gave me the presentation privileges.
We don't see a PowerPoint either. It's totally just the pictures of the people that are here.
Okay.
Yep. I see too.
Let's see. Let me see if I can fix this. All right. I might have to just present my desktop and see if you guys can see that. Okay, so we have a few people that can see the PowerPoint and a few that can't. If you guys that can't see the PowerPoint can log in and actually type in to Ashley. Ashley might be able to help you out with that since I won't be able to do both at the same time. But also, if you want to have the PowerPoint at the end of this presentation, it will be uploaded. It's on our DHS website. So it's the same PowerPoint that we've used before. I've just changed a few details, but we will update it to have the most recent one. Will that be okay for you guys?
Hey, are you going to watch that thing?
It's really hard for us to follow without the PowerPoint. Is it available now on the website?
Yes, it's on the DHS website. Hold on.
PowerPoint. There's only 3 of us logged in, it looks like, and the other 2 people said they can't see it either.
I have about 44 participants logged in, so there might
only
be a problem.
4.
Okay.
We have a wrong meeting.
Yeah, do we have a wrong meeting invite?
It might be. So there's a few people that are saying that they logged on to one computer and then they switched computers and then or they logged on with the same way and then the PowerPoint was there. So you might need to log out and then log back in order to see it.
We did do that.
Okay. Well then the second best thing that I can do is if you go to our dhssd.gov and go to our developmental disabilities tab, and you scroll down to presentations, the level of care process PowerPoint is under the presentation tab all the way at pretty much almost at the bottom of the website. So at this point, I don't know that I would want to log out and log back in because then I would lose everyone. So, and I understand completely that it would be very hard for the people that don't have the PowerPoint to stay in the same mind frame as everyone else, but there are people logged onto the phone as well. So I will continue just going through the PowerPoint. Again, this is just a refresher. Everybody should pretty much be on point with what the level of care process is. I'm just going over the same information that was given before and then asking if there's any specific questions that are in regards to the level of care. So again, I will share the PowerPoint with everyone. It's on our website and it's the same one. Like I said, the only changes are to the provisional plan of care and that all the information should be coming directly to me. So if that's okay with everyone, I do know that we have our SCR part of the presentation coming at 2 o'clock with Samantha Hines, and you might be able to see her presentation. She'll log in from her computer, and then hopefully that will solve the problem of people not being able to see the PowerPoint. So going back to what I was saying, at all the documents required for a level of care are a little bit different when it's a person just transferring from one provider to another. You do not need to submit a level of care for a transfer. If a person is already under HCBS services, all that you would need is an SCR filled out correctly with all of the changes in services, and then an ICAP if there are any changes in the ICAP. So if a participant is on HCBS and has a case manager, but they're switching from one CSP to another, all you would need to make that happen is an SCR, and then Sam Hines will be able to tell you a little bit more in depth about which form that will be. So as I stated there, we have updated our forms so that we have one form specifically for a provisional plan of care. So we will put all these forms on our website and then send them out as well to everyone that we can to update this whole new process. But it was a little bit confusing for quite a few people to have the SCR form act as the provisional plan of care. And I was getting some SCRs that were marked as significant changes, but were in fact a plan of care, and then those get misfiled because they were marked incorrectly, and then either got denied or people didn't know what to do with them. So we thought we would make it a whole lot easier for all the case managers out there if we had different forms. So the provisional plan of care will be a form that will only be used for the level of care. It's going to be called the DHS DD 812, I believe, not 811. And then this will be just when a participant is brand new or starting the service, HCBS services, or CTS, of course. It has the same information that you would be using for a significant change request or that you used in the past, but it doesn't have the ability to change services. So it has the name of the participant, Medicaid number or date of birth, case manager's name, the funding type, of course, the question of if this is an enhanced rate or if the participant is transitioning from an ICF. Then we have the same space that we did have before with the case management provider and the start date of service, community support provider and the start date. And then, of course, if the participant starts HCBS services for case management and a community support provider on the same date, we would want the information of all the services that are being opened. So, of course, we have the residential services, day hab, pre-voc, other services, and of course, the signatures approval at the bottom for both case management and CSPs. And I will switch to my desktop at the end of the presentation to show you the form, and hopefully that will help those people that couldn't see the PowerPoint from before to be able to at least view the changed form. I wanted to go over the effective date again a little bit more in depth. So all the documents that are required for the level of care must have dates prior to or on the proposed effective date of service for a participant. So if there are any dates that are beyond the start date, then the date beyond will become the start date for services. Again, an example, if the 717 wasn't completed until 10 days after the start date, then that's when the new start date will be. Any funding for services provided prior to the start date will not be paid out. So that's why we want to emphasize to have all these documents completed on time and signed with the correct date, because it will impact how you guys can be paid for those services. I also added on this PowerPoint that if you can't see it, you will once you do get access to it, that after I complete the level of care. So the level of care comes to me. I look through all the documents, ensure that we have all the proper paperwork. I give that whole packet to our waiver manager for a SMART review. What this means is that Colin Hutchison will enter it into our SMART system and then pretty much does the same thing I do, but just pays attention only to the dates and to make sure that the IQ and the adaptive scores are there. So it's kind of a checks and balance system. So if I don't catch something that I should have caught, then Colin would catch it on the SMART review, and that way we'll make sure that in fact the person is eligible, that they are entered in our system, and that he approves of the level of care as well. So the packet goes once the SMART review is complete and Colin signs off on it, I email the 730 to the DSS benefits specialist, and that's who will issue the approval form that comes. You guys should get one of those forms, and then I get a copy of those forms as well. So again, a reminder, the application to DSS has a 45-day time frame, which in some cases can be extended by DSS, but typically they want to be able to just have one document in one time, just because it makes it easier for everybody involved. It's pretty much suggested that when you do submit the level of care to me, you guys submit the DSS 265 at the same time. That way, once I'm done with my level of care process, the time frame for DSS doesn't run out. Another part of the level of care process is the eligibility review team. So if at times I am unable to make a determination based on eligibility based off the information you give me, I will submit all the paperwork to our eligibility review team, who will then make a determination. So I'm not 100% sure who all is involved in the eligibility review team at the moment, but I do believe it's Colin, our assistant director, Julie, one of the nurses, and I think we get the psychologist from SDDC, but I will have to double check on that. The ERT approval date, so if I send in the level of care to the ERT approval date does not affect the date of funding for services like the determination does. However, if the participant is found not eligible by the ERT, funding will not be approved. So just a reminder that there is a second way for us to make sure that we do have all the information and make the correct determination. Community Training Services, or CTS, is a general fund source for funding for services for participants. Typically, the CTS has the same eligibility requirements, but they do have more flexibility with the usage of the funds. And if you guys ever have any questions specifically for CTS, I do have Liliana in the room, and she could answer any of those questions. There is no funding request that's necessary for CTS applicants. However, pretty much the same documents are required. The 700 form, which is the financial eligibility form, the DHS provisional plan of care, which is the 812, the copy of the psychological with the same criteria, so it has to have the IQ and the adaptive scores, and the ICAP signed, and the ICAP booklet and CompuScore. Is there a question? Okay. I can hear someone talking in the background, so if you could please turn your phones on mute, unless you have a question, which if you do, then we're happy to answer that. CTS services are paid by units, not by a daily rate. And then just a reminder that units are hourly or in 15-minute increments based on the contract. There's no approval letter sent from DSS or DDD. Instead, once we do scan back the provisional plan of care, that will act as the CTS funding approval. So you guys wouldn't get the 730 for the CTS funded participants, but the plan of care will act as the funding approval. So if you're moving from HCBS to CTS, the discharge process must be completed. That's just part of our process and our requirements. And then if a participant has been on HCBS, CTS, level of care is required. It's just wanted to emphasize that for both funding sources, there is a level of care.
This is Amy with Black Hills Works. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have a quick question going back to the FCR process when an initial level of care is submitted in the provisional plan of care. With the SCRs that you guys are requiring submitted, is that going to be coming from the case manager? Is that going to be coming from the CSP in regards to the services provided if they're both starting at the same date?
Okay, so that's a good question, and I'm glad that you asked that. All the paperwork for the level of care should be coming from the case manager. However, like you said, in your case, where if the participant is starting both case management and community support provider on the same date, the community support provider should have signed the plan of care and then submitted it to the case manager. It is the case manager's responsibility to get that to me to be able to process it with the level of care, but I also do look to make sure that the CSP signs off on all the provisional plans of care that are necessary.
Okay, because currently what's happening here at Black Hills Works is that with a lot of the things, I'm initiating them because I'm in the know as far as what the individual is doing for pre-vocational services, what their residential services look like, etc. So the communication between case management and CSP needs to be open, I guess, so we can know when they're starting services, because that sometimes is not getting relayed. So this SCR is being held up because that information is not transferred, I guess,
Or communicated.
Yes.
or communicated.
Mm-hmm. So I
Okay.
understand there's problems like that, but if it works out that we want to do it just one way so it could be easy for everyone. So if there's any time that there's conflict between the case manager and the CSP, or just communication is not good, please feel free to include me on any of the emails or calls if you guys have any problems that you're trying to work through. Again, I am the program specialist for the case management agencies, and I can help mediate some of these issues as they arise.
Okay, so this is just going forward then. So level of cares that have been submitted in the past that are still out there not being processed, and SCR is not required, or it is?
It is. So
Okay.
the provisional plan of care is part of the level of care, and we cannot process a level of care without that. So I do know in the instance with Black Hills Works that there are a few level of cares that Chelsea, who is your program specialist, is holding on to just because she started the process. So you would have to complete that with her, but it doesn't matter if it's a past or present or future level of care. All level of care needs to have what we called the SCR, or a provisional plan of care.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, of course. All right, so that kind of completes the PowerPoint. There wasn't a lot to the PowerPoint. It's just going over the same information. And Sam Hines just came in the room to start off the SCR, the changes in the SCR forms. But if there are any questions at all regarding the level of care, this is the time for you to ask. Okay, so if there are no questions, I am going to go through and just hopefully I can do this from my screen. I wanted to show you guys what the new provisional plan of care paper looks like. Okay, so can everybody still see can everyone see my desktop?
Yes.
Okay. So
No,
No.
any of it.
So are there still people that cannot see anything at all?
We see 20 participants.
All I
Okay.
can see is 20 participants.
All right.
I don't see the PowerPoint. All of that.
Liv can see the provisional plan of care that's up.
Okay. So I don't know what the issue is where there's some people that can only see 20 participants, where on my screen, as you can see, there's 50. And I truly apologize for that, because I know it's a lot easier for people that are visual learners to see what's going on at the same time. Hopefully when we transfer to Sam, you guys will be able to see what she's presenting. But did you want to do all three forms?
I don't like when you do it too.
Okay, so for those of you that can see, I'm just going to quickly go over this for you guys to be able to see the difference. So the DHS DD 812 will, from now on, will act as the provisional plan of care and will only be used with the level of care process. Sam, of course, will go over the SCRs, but just to let you know, I will accept the SCRs as the plan of care for a couple more months, just because I know people get used to the old ways, and sometimes don't find the forms until later on. So I won't deny something if it's not in this new form, but we do want to start using this because it'll be a lot simpler to complete the level of care if we don't get confused by the SCR form. As you can see, it's pretty much the same information, and this is the form with the guidance put in it, but all these red letterings will be gone once we put the plan of care out there. If someone, I can hear someone rustling. I wish I had some candy to rustle to, but if you can put your phone on mute, it will be helpful. Going down, the provisional plan of care, like I stated, has the same information that you input into the SCR. It just doesn't have the ability to go to start services for, let's say, day hours. It doesn't have a place where you can say old day hours or new day hours. It just says day hours because this person is brand new to services and they never had this service before. So it's it includes the information of what category it is, paid employment, non-paid, what the funding source is, and Liliana wanted to emphasize that she really needs people to fill out what funding it is for pretty much all of the services because it does affect how she puts it into the system. If something is funded by a different funding source, let's say HCBS or DSS, VR, vocational rehab, for instance, she wants to be able to put that correctly into the system from the start. So I will, as you can see, scrolling down the sheet, it's the same information. It has the supported employment, pre-vocational, other service like speech, hearing, language, medical equipment, and other medical. And then, of course, the SCR approval on the bottom, the new CSP signature and the new case management signature. And the last thing I wanted to say before I turn this over to Samantha is that the signature dates are not do not affect the start date for services, but what you put in as the start date for the service does. So let's say that you put in that the start date for case management is August 1st, but the case manager doesn't sign the form until August 15th. The start date will be August 1st because if we go by the sign date, then you guys won't get paid for pretty much a lot of the services because there's paperwork that gets signed later on with SCRs. But I have had that question come up, and I wanted to emphasize that in only the provisional plan of care, the start date goes by what you put in for the services, not by the signature date. All right, so if you guys think of any questions, you can still ask them at the end of the presentation, but I will turn this over to Samantha.
This is Amy with Black Hills Works. I just have one quick question. With that new form that you guys just showed, are you going to email that to the community support providers as well as the case managers?
Yes, we will have all 3 forms sent.
And then the case manager initiates the form.
I'm sorry, there were 2 people talking at once. Can you repeat?
So the case manager then would initiate the form?
For the provisional plan of care, yes. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Of course. And then I can hit.
Okay, just wanted to check that everybody can hear me.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I'm assuming everybody can hear me. So I will be presenting the other 2 forms that Noemi talked about. Originally, our significant change request form had 3 purposes: the provisional plan of care, request for significant changes, and provider changes. So these were split into 3 separate forms in hopes of making things easier for case managers and CSPs to make it easier for them to fill out and make sure that we had all of the information that we needed for each of the types of changes. So Noemi's already gone over the provisional plan of care, and I'm going to move on to the request for significant change. This form hasn't changed a whole lot in the last couple of years. It's still the way that we're going to capture sort of those day-to-day changes, moves to different residential locations, changes to the number of day and employment hours that someone might be receiving. That will still be the purpose of the request for significant change. The biggest difference on this form is that we've eliminated the place at the top for changes in provider. So all of that information is on a new form that we'll go through next. But the request for significant change really is only for those sort of day-to-day changes. Just like before, the top of the form is for identifying the name of the participant, the Medicaid number for those who are receiving HCBS. This would be the date of birth for anyone on CTS. The name of the person who's submitting the form, which should always be the case manager for the individual. This gives us a contact person if we have any questions about the way something's filled out on the significant change form. We have a place for the name of the agency that's providing case management and the community support provider. This is information that's important because in our office it is the program specialist for the community support provider who will be processing these changes. We've identified on this form areas that are required. So all of the items that are drop-down boxes, so for instance in this first residential section, funding, ownership, and room and board funding are all required items, and we need all of these drop-down boxes completed when there is a change to residential services. Our office is not able to process significant change forms that do not have this information. All right, if someone's ending residential service, we still need the address for the individual. That's just a required item on our end to know where the person is living. We also need to know in the residential section about the capacity of the home where someone's living. Even if the capacity isn't changing, we still need to know what the capacity is. If there is a change in the capacity, we also need to know all of the names of the participants who are impacted by that capacity change. The participants that may be impacted by a capacity change might not all have the same case manager, so this is information that would likely have to come from the community support provider. There is a place for start and end dates when we're doing address changes. Just a reminder that the end date and the start date cannot be the same date. For day hours, just like residential, all of the drop-down boxes, that's information that our office needs to be able to process significant change forms. Funding is required on every single one of the changes. Some of the other drop-down boxes are as needed. Under day hours, there might not be paid employment, and so that wouldn't need to be filled out. But the funding for sure needs to be filled out, and the others need to be filled out as applicable. The only other note I'd like to make on the day service, we have a place for the total number of hours This should be the non-paid hours plus the paid hours. So just some simple math in that box about the total number of hours. The wage information is also information that's important to our office. If there are paid hours, we have to have the wage. So that's another area where we wouldn't be able to process a significant change form if we didn't have that information. Supported employment also has 5 drop-down boxes. These would all be required if there was a change in or an addition of supported employment. Same with pre-vocational. Nothing else really changed about these areas. We just need the total number of previous hours and the total number of new hours, the wages and the start and end dates. Other services, the funding item is again required, and we need that before we can process the SCR if there is a change in the other services section. There's still a place here for ICAP changes. If there is an ICAP change, we do require an SCR. The entire ICAP booklet needs to be submitted if there is a change to the ICAP. If the effective date of the ICAP change, let me take that back. If there's an ICAP change and some other service changes, like to the number of day hours, if those 2 changes have different effective dates, there'll need to be 2 separate SCRs. So if the change to day services happens on September 1st, but the effective date of the ICAP change is September 15th, there needs to be 2 separate SCRs. Just like before, we're still requiring that there be a description of why services are being changed. It should describe why the change is being made, if there was any sort of team discussion about why the change was made, and just give a little bit more detail. The description of why services are being changed shouldn't just say Johnny needs 15 hours instead of 10 hours of day service. It should go into more detail